evening, my dad and I were taking a drive together in the car. It was just me and him. And he saw someone on the side of the road that I think he knew, or I thought he knew. And he drives over there, pulls over, gets out, starts talking to him, talks for a few minutes. Then he gets back in the car, and we start driving back home. And after, I could tell his mood had shifted a little bit. And then with an odd tone of voice, he just goes, "I think the Lord just told me to give that man my car." I'm like, okay, all right, cool. So a few emotions ran through me at the moment. I think, honestly, the first one was like, this is so cool. This is like real Bible stuff happening in real life. It's like Acts 2, we're risking it all for Jesus. And then he said, "I think your mom's gonna be pissed." And so we get home and we start cleaning the car out, making it nice. And we finish that. We drive over to where the guy was, and we give the car away. Mom met us there. She wasn't too mad. She calls it silently supportive. No, just kidding. She wasn't mad. But we give the car away, and it wasn't like, it was his daily driver. It wasn't like a nice car. It was his Crown Vic, you know. But he did give it away. And then a few weeks later, I guess we didn't do that great of a job cleaning it out because he realized that he thinks he left his gun in the center console of the car. And so he was like, "Why didn't I get his name or number?" Or like, "Why didn't I think this through more?" Or, I mean, he was just a little more generous than he had planned on being that day. Obviously that story sticks with me for how wild it is. But I think when I think of that story and I think of my own life, like, could I be that obedient? I think I get tripped up a little bit because I think that when I think of the grand gestures, for whatever reason, they seem slightly easier in my mind to decide whether or not I'll do them. Like, I'm like, I think I could maybe get to a point where I'd be willing to give a car away or, risk it all. And I don't know why that tends to seem a little bit more simple in my mind, but I think the place that I actually get tripped up is how that type of obedience plays out in my daily life. I feel constantly this tension between something like giving away my things, like being willing to be that obedient on the spot all the time. I feel the tension between that and like being a good steward of the things that God has entrusted me with. Or I'll put it like this, I feel a tension between living out my faith and things like wisdom and reason and responsibility. It's hard to figure out where that line is for me. Because I think I have my own versions of this story, my dad giving away his car, but often I feel the same prompt or a similar one that he feels from the Lord, but I stop at reasoning with the Lord often of like, I pick a lesser option or something that blends reasonability with what the Lord has asked me to do, and we meet in the middle and I bargain with him. Or more times than I'd like to admit, I've just abandoned the idea altogether. Because I think the thing is that I don't always see Jesus in a way, I don't always see him in a way that causes my grip on the things that I count as costly in my life to lose my grip on them. Most of the days, if I'm honest, I kind of feel like I'm more managing my relationship with Jesus. Of like, I had a lot of coffee today, so I feel good to obey you. Or my emotions are lined up, it feels right, and I ask me to do whatever right now. And I'll be in. Or I feel like I'm choosing what is and isn't his leading in my life all the time. And let me ask you, do you believe that Jesus changes everything? Yes. You're much more awake than the last service. Yes. So we believe that, we'll say it, but the only problem tends to be that I find if you're outside of the churchdom culture or the Christian culture, looking in, it doesn't seem, if you look at us, that Jesus changes all that much. Now, if you know someone personally, maybe you see a huge change in their life, but oftentimes we say that Jesus changes everything, but it doesn't often translate into the way that we live our life. The problem with claims like Jesus changes everything is when that claim intersects with how we live our life. Do we actually put it into practice? Because I know that if I follow Jesus, where I spend my time, what I say, what I risk, my outlook on life, everything should change. But more often, I discover that in moments like where the pressure is on or the ask from God is clear, that he's asking me to move towards something more costly, I find myself cashing out or trading with God something with him besides obedience, like comfort, my comfort over risk, or my safety over my trust in him. And ultimately, I'm choosing myself over him. Today, I want to say to you that the way that you see Jesus determines whether you pour out or you cash out. What I mean by pour out is that life that is completely and totally surrendered to God. It's, Lord, I am your servant. You own everything. My whole life is for you. Take a hold of my thoughts. Take a hold of the things that I love, and it's all for you. My life, I am totally abandoned to what you would have today. Cashing out is, I think, the thing that we do a little all too often, where we say, I'm gonna say yes to Jesus, but then on Tuesday, like, work is stressful and life is complicated and I have a ton of responsibility and I'm not sure if I have what it takes to pour out right now. And so we make deals with God and we cash out a bit. And today I want you to think about this in your life. Look over your last week or today. And would you say that you're someone who pours out or someone that cashes out? And I don't think I'm alone in that struggle. I'm just gonna blame you right off the bat. I'm gonna drag you along with me because I don't think, and when I ask, do you pour out a cash out? I think it's tempting to think, am I a pour outer or am I cash outer? And we separate into categories, but I don't think it's that easy because I think in a day we tend to drift between one and the other. I think we've all had moments that we're actually kind of proud of, where we obeyed radically and it felt like the most natural place in the world to give it all away and to just abandon, you know? But then we've all had moments where it wasn't as easy to let go. And maybe we are still holding on to it. And I think the temptation here is to think in strict categories, like, am I a good guy or am I a bad guy? But there's a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, and he says, "Gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating good from evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart." Meaning that the same heart that has vowed to follow Jesus with our heart, soul, mind, and strength is the same God that abandons him when something more convenient for us shows up. It protects itself, it calculates, and holds something in reserve. And before I go any further, I want to talk to the good kids in the room, the good church kids in the room. What are we supposed to do? We're not supposed to cash out. We're supposed to pour out. That's the right answer. Close your Bibles. You're good to go home. The temptation, I think, is to think, I know where this talk is going. I'm way ahead of you. I'm supposed to pour out. And if Jesus was in the room right now, he would be saying, you need to pour out your life. Of course, you shouldn't cash out all the time. And you know the right answer. But I want you to ask, not so much do I know the right answer, but am I living out the right answer? If I know the answer is to pour out, does my life line up with it? And so I think that one of the other questions that I think the text today is going to force on us might feel like, how much should I give Jesus? And I don't want you to go there, because I think if someone's asking me that question, I just bombard myself with guilt, and it's never enough, and I need to work harder, and all that stuff. What I would rather you think is this: what do you actually see when you look at him? How valuable is Jesus? I said that word weird, valuable. Distraction. How valuable is Jesus to you? Because how you see Jesus determines whether you pour out or you cash out. And in this story, we're going to see 3 different ways that people see Jesus. Some people see Jesus as a threat. Others see Jesus as a treasure. And the other group that we're going to look at sees him as a transaction. And if you've been to church at all, you know that if it alliterates, it is biblical truth. And so I got you 3 T's, so you know you can trust it. Treasure, transaction, or a threat. And so here we go. This is Mark 14:1. What do you actually see when you look at Jesus? How valuable is he to you? Jesus is a threat. This is verse 1. It was now 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to arrest him by stealth and kill him. For they had said, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people. So Passover is this celebration where the people of God are remembering how he rescued them out of the hands of the Egyptians and freed them from slavery. But ironically, the leaders of God's people in this same season, same moment, are looking how to kill the same God who rescued them. And why do they want to kill him? If you remember a few weeks ago we talked about it, or a few chapters back. What I actually want to do here in this little section is I want to try to put you in the shoes, or the sandals, or whatever they wore, of the religious leaders. I want you to try to see what's going on from their perspective. They are very intelligent, very reasonable. They're spiritual. They know the scriptures. They have a ton of responsibility watching over God's people, keeping God's law. And along comes this man who they all knew. He was a great guy. And then all of a sudden, he gets a ton of popularity. He starts becoming super influential. And he can do miracles, which is crazy in and of itself. He can do miracles. And so his crowd and his influence starts to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, it seems that people who used to submit to your authority are now submitting to his authority. And when you talk to him, he doesn't seem interested in submitting to you. It's like he's in his own little world, doing his own little thing, and it's really working. And the longer that he's been around and teaching and the crowd has grown, they've gotten even more fanatic. Like just a few weeks ago, he comes to Jerusalem and all of his crowd is throwing palm branches and their coats down in front of him as he walks into Jerusalem, causing a scene, singing, Hosanna, God in the highest, Son of David. And so if you are responsible for keeping the order, keeping the peace, this guy is a problem. He has the heart of the people. You're losing influence. And his fans are getting crazier and crazier. Now, the problem, the pinch point, or like why it's so important to do something about him now is that for Passover, the population of Jerusalem swells to like 4 times. And the reason why that's a problem is because Rome is watching. So you have this guy who is unpredictable. Crazy people love him. The population 4 times, risk is higher. If they cause a riot, like they say it here, look, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people. What they're saying is, we don't know what this guy is gonna do. If there's an uproar or a disagreement between the people, Rome will squish us like a bug. We need to take this guy out. It's better that he is out than all these people. We risk their lives. I say all of that to say that this is the first way that people tend to see Jesus, is as a threat. And I think what's interesting is seeing Jesus as a threat isn't always obvious to us. I think if you did a good job, or if I did a good job of putting yourself in their shoes, you could see how reasonable it is to get rid of Jesus. Now, maybe not kill him, because we love God, so we would just put him in jail for a while until Passover's done, and then we can let him out. But if you feel the responsibility that they likely felt, it seems wise to put Jesus away. Seeing Jesus as a threat is sometimes shrouded in wisdom. Think about this. What are you shrouding in wisdom to hide from the Lord? We want to be able to look at the religious leaders and say, how could they do that? How could they do such a thing? But if we're honest, and that line that separates good from evil doesn't separate person from person, but splits my heart down the middle, if I'm capable of both, what this story or this thought should produce in me is not how could they do that, but where do I do that in my own life? We don't often reject Jesus because we're outright villains and we hate him so much, but we often reject him because we feel the tension of this life that requires us to follow him with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, pushes up against our comfort. It pushes up against our control or our plan or our hopes that we had for how things would go, or our responsibility. God has called me to be responsible for my family and for my finances and for what I own, and suddenly following Jesus can feel risky and unpredictable and costly. Now, not that discernment is a bad thing, but here's what I think we do. I think we hide from obedience behind discernment and wisdom. I can look so wise and not actually be obedient. We'll say things like, God, I'm not sure if this is you or the pizza I ate. I've been having weird sleep lately. I'll give it a few weeks and then we'll revisit this, Lord. I'm in a season of discernment right now. Just don't trust myself. So it's odd how extremely spiritual we tend to get when we're avoiding obedience at a cost. And I think underneath it all comes this same conclusion from the religious leaders to us, is that we don't actually, or we don't actually think he is worth what obedience might cost us. That's cashing out instead of pouring out. And that's the first way that I think people tend to see Jesus as a threat. What in your life are you shrouding in wisdom and reason to hide it from obedience? Now the scene shifts a bit here in verse 3. It says, and while he was at Bethany is about 2 miles from Jerusalem. They're in the house of Simon the leper. This is likely someone Jesus has already healed. And as he was reclining at table, a woman walks in. And in John's account of the story, he names her as Mary Magdalene. Mary comes in with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard. It's like perfume. Very costly. It's worth an entire year's wage. And she breaks the flask and pours it over his head. This is what it means to pour out. Literally pouring out perfume. This is what it is to see Jesus as a treasure. Now, this perfume was rare and costly. And it doesn't make sense for someone like her to be giving a gift like this. It would be like you invited over to your friend's kid's birthday party, and you show up and you pay for their college. Oh, okay, thank you. Or you go to Thanksgiving and you pour a whole thing of Acqua di Gio on your friend's head. No matter how, it's just an awkward moment. It's wild what she has just done. But I think there's a few things to notice about how she treasures Jesus and what it means to pour out. Is in that moment, if you place yourself in that room, she's not just pouring out a year's wages, but she's pouring out what the security of her future, of what a year's wages could have afforded her when life got rough. She's pouring out what people are going to think of her. Because it's not some cultural thing that everybody used to do. It was just as weird then as it would be if you did that at Thanksgiving. She's pouring out the plans and hopes of how it would go. She has no guarantee of how Jesus is going to react to this. Hopefully he's okay with it. But to her, something about Jesus felt more valuable to her than anything she was holding on to before this moment. And immediately, let's place ourselves in the room, there is pushback. Verse 4, there were some who said to themselves indignantly, why was this ointment wasted? We can't scoop it up out of the dirt to get it back. This ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor, and they scolded her. Remember the wisdom and the discernment. Wisdom would say this is a dumb thing to do. And not all discernment is bad. If you feel like I'm saying that, tim@lifegj.org. You can send an email there, or there's blue cards in the back. There's actually some silver cans on either side of the black boxes. They're not actually trash cans. You can actually put those in there, and they are trash cans. I'm just kidding, sorry. Don't do that. But immediately, there's pushback in the room. And listen to how responsible it sounds, how reasonable it sounds, and even how compassionate it sounds to the poor. And what's wild is that this is the same room, the same Jesus. They're all witnessing the same moments, but they are walking away with completely different views of Jesus' worth. And I think we tend to assume that if we're in the same room, we go to the same church, we listen to the same songs, we hear the same sermon, that we probably see Jesus the same, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. You can sit right next to someone and hear the same words and walk away and see the same thing and walk away with a different opinion of Jesus' worth. Because this how you see Jesus determines whether you pour out or cash out thing is personal. It is not about how the room sees Jesus. It's about how you see Jesus. How you see Jesus determines how you see everything else. You're not accountable for how the room sees him. You're accountable for how you see him. Even though the room can be so influential in how we tend to live out our faith, this is about you and how you value Jesus and how it shows up in your life. A little experiment for us. If I asked John, running the sound, to play us some country music right now, how many of you would be glad about that? Not as many country fans. How many are not okay with this idea? Okay, a little bit less. Okay, let's watch a movie. Let's do a rom-com. How many are cool with this? Rom-coms, how are you? No, thank you. No rom-com, got it. Die Hard, yes. Die Hard, no. It's a Christmas movie? It's not a Christmas movie. Imagine ourselves in the same room, watching the same thing, listening to the same thing, and there's completely opposite reactions to what's happening. And I think if I were to place myself in that room where Mary pours out the perfume on Jesus, put yourself in that room, I imagine it, see it in your mind, I feel secondhand embarrassment so bad. I'm like, oh no, that was a lot of money. She should have asked before. Like, I'm sure Jesus doesn't love to eat his food covered in something. We don't know what that was. Oh my gosh. That's a lot. I'm not seeing it the way that she sees it. I'm feeling incredibly awkward. I think some of us in the room might likely share the opinion of some of the disciples of, I thought God asked us to be a good steward of the things that he's given us. We should count the cost and be wise. But the problem with that thought is Jesus' response to it. In verse 6, he said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me." And it's not that Jesus doesn't care about stewardship or wisdom or using your resources in a way that's wise and calculated. It's just that in this moment, Jesus understands that she is ascribing value to him, and he understands that he needs to be the most valuable thing to you. But Jesus, it's unwise, it's uncalculated, it's messy, it's inconsiderate of others. I don't like the smell of nard. Remember the hiding from obedience, our expressions, hiding our expressions of love and gratitude behind wisdom and discernment. But look at his response. He continues in verse 7. "For you always have the poor with you. And whenever you want, you can do good for them." Now, he's not dismissing the poor. All he's saying is that if you really value the poor, you always have the opportunity to care for them. But this moment is unique. Bringing them back into the reality of what's about to happen. Him being taken to the cross, beaten brutally. He says, you will not always have me. You'll always have the poor. If you want to care for them, you can always do that, but you won't always have me. And she has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly, I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. What they called a waste, Jesus saw as beautiful. I don't think he's impressed with the dollar amount that was poured out. I think he's affirming what she saw in him. And honestly, if it was me, if I was her, I would be overthinking this like crazy. I'm like, I've probably already decided that I'm going to do it, but it's just like, he's with his boys. I don't want to interrupt. That's kind of rude. Maybe I'll just hand it to him, or I don't want to embarrass him in front of him, so I'll catch him, when he comes out of the bathroom or something, and I'll pour it on him then, just so it's or I'll give it to him, and then if he wants to pour it on himself, he can do that if he wants to. Mary sees Jesus as a treasure. And I think there is something interesting about what Jesus says about her. Wherever the gospel is told, this story will be told in memory of her. And that catches me off guard a little bit, just because I'm like, when I think of the gospel, I don't think of the perfume story. I think of the cross, I think of salvation, repentance, but I don't think of the perfume story. But Jesus seems to care that this story would be attached to the story of the gospel. And I started thinking about why. And I think, when we share the gospel, the good news of Jesus with people, it's usually leading or trying to prompt the question, so, do you believe in him? We tell them the whole story. It's like, do you believe? Do it, believe. But Jesus adds this story of the woman pouring out the perfume on him as a part of the gospel. And I think that if I were to add that story to my telling of the gospel to someone, it wouldn't only prompt, so do you believe? It would prompt the question, so what is he worth to you? And I think what Jesus is worth to you is so central to the gospel message. It's not just about do you believe or not. It's about his worth to you. But I think we tend still to shy away from acting like this because we're considerate of others. We're discerning and we're careful and we're calculated. And we tend to not pour out extravagantly because we love to count the cost. I love focusing on counting the cost. I know that Jesus also says one time to one guy to sell everything you have and to follow him, but the context, and that's not really what that meant. And look at this moment. Jesus is praising Mary for what she has done. He says, you see it, you get it. Thank you. Thank you. Do you know this is one of the most beautiful and precious things that anyone has ever done for Jesus in his entire ministry on earth? Mary sees something, y'all. And I think we tend to miss out on moments like this because we count the cost. We do things like counting the cost and calculating and thinking twice and being wise and, oh, Jesus, you need perfume? I know a place to get it cheap. That's what you need. We miss it entirely. It will cost you something to act on seeing Jesus as the treasure that he truly is. And because it often costs us something, not always money, but our pride or what people think of us, we tend to then I think because it costs us something, we tend to start seeing him as this next viewpoint here. This is seeing him as a transaction. This is verse 10. It says, "Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him to them." Quick side note. Did you know that there was another Judas in the 12? There were two Judases. Could you imagine being the other Judas? And they're like, "You're Judas?" He's like, "No, I'm the other one. I'm not that Judas." That would stink to be that guy. And when they heard it, they were glad. And remember, these are reasonable people with a lot of responsibility. And so they're probably thinking this is a miracle from God, that he has brought someone from Jesus' 12 to sell him out. And they promised to give him money. And he sought an opportunity to betray him. The third way that people tend to see Jesus is as a transaction. Because when we think of Judas's life, there's not a ton that we know about him, but John tattletales a little bit. He says that Judas was over the ministry finances for Jesus, and he would often help himself to what was in the money bag. And then clearly in this moment, Judas is all about it because he gets some money out of betraying Jesus. And so what we can kind of see about Judas is he's likely in this for himself. But something again, we do that separation thing. That's Judas, not me. But if you think about Judas, Judas has done something that you and I would struggle to do. He has left it all behind to follow Jesus. He's quit his job. He's left his family if he had one. And he is trekking through the dustiness of following Jesus. He seems obedient to God, far more than I think I would ever be. But the fascinating thing is that even in obedience, it can hide the motivation of our heart. The hidden value of what I get out of my relationship with Jesus. I mean, following Jesus is good. These are people with good morals. It's good to do. Okay, I'm in. You guys are a little judgmental, but we can get over that. But it seems like a generally good thing to do, and it's good for me. Heaven, streets of gold, I'm in. Easy. That sounds like a great life ahead of me. I'll do it. I think we all, maybe we know someone like this who won't help you out unless it works out for them. They never show up unless it benefits them or works out for them perfectly. This is someone we tend to not want to be around, but we think it's different between me and God. And before we make Judas the villain, remember that this is something that we can do too. Doing all these things for Jesus, seeing what was in it for himself. We say, I'll follow Jesus because of the great community and the blessing. And I'll follow Jesus and go to church because I think my kids like the classes. It works out for me and my family and my schedule. And I'll trust him because I think I'm promised a good life. And I'll obey because of the blessing that's in front of me. But usually the moment that Jesus requires something of you, or ministry requires, or obedience requires you letting go of control or your pride, or asks you to look a little foolish, either you're out, or you circle back to seeing Jesus as a threat again and you reason with him and shroud obedience and wisdom and discernment. Here's what I think Mark is showing us in this passage, that there are three people three ways of looking at Jesus: a threat, a transaction, or a treasure. And the uncomfortable truth is that reaction to Jesus is alive and well in me today. This week, today, the last hour, I think before I walked up here, I'm constantly weaving between those views of Jesus. But it's important to see it, because how you see Jesus determines whether you pour out or you cash out. And so what do you do? What do you do with this? I cannot make you see Jesus more valuable than you already do. But there is one person in this story who seems like they got it right: Mary. And Mary, there's another story about Mary that I think is really valuable, gives us some insight into why she might be the way that she is. Jesus and his stinky 12 walk into a house. It's Mary and her sister Martha. And Martha gets right to work, preparing all this food for these guys, trying to be responsible, getting the food ready, cleaning the house, all the preparation. And Mary decides to not help, which is real. That would be so frustrating to me. I'm trying to love Jesus and his crew the best way that I can. And you decide to sit in front of Jesus at his feet and just look at him and listen. And so Martha does what I think any of us would do. Jesus, would you tell her to help me with all the things? And Jesus' response is, Martha, you are so worried about so many things, but one thing is necessary. And Mary has chosen the good part. The thing that Mary sees is this: that if Jesus is in the room, he has her full attention and her full devotion. When Jesus is in the room, nothing else matters. Do you see how irresponsible that is? How inconsiderate Mary is of her sister. How inconsiderate Mary is of the smell of nard in the room and making people comfortable or uncomfortable. But to Mary, all she sees is Jesus. And Jesus eats it up. He defends her. This is the second time that he's defended her. He praises her. You get it, you see it, you understand. This is the way. Wherever the gospel goes, this comes with it. You value me more than anything else. And you don't just say it and tell your friends that you're like that. Everyone sees it. It's so obvious that you value me over anything else. As we close, I want to invite Tim up, and we're going to reflect for a moment. But I think so often in our life, we find ourselves working to please Jesus like Martha, or we're trying to figure out how this also benefits us. How can I obey radically, but also stay in the air conditioning? Or we're towing the line between wisdom and obedience, discernment and following Jesus, like the religious leaders. But we learn from Mary that only one thing is necessary: time with Jesus alone, him at the center. The only way that we learn to see how valuable Jesus is not by giving more away. It's by time with him. At his feet in worship, in adoration and praise and thankfulness. It's not trying harder. It's not, I'm going to go home and figure out what my flask is and give it away. I don't want you to be exchanging car titles in the parking lot after this. It's not what I'm trying to get to. I don't want you to get here and force devotion. I just want you to do what Mary did. Learn to sit at Jesus' feet, because you cannot manufacture what Mary saw, but you can sit where she sat. You can put yourself where she was, because treasuring Jesus means not holding back. She doesn't hold anything back. If Jesus is there, she's all in. And we find ourselves stuck in the mechanics of it all and the details of it all. And we're like Martha. We're like, does he like green tea or black tea? Or what should I do that actually pleases him? Is he going to notice that hole in my wall that the other good Judas said he would fix, but he didn't? So maybe he's not that good. We get tied up in the details of it all, and they distract us from the one important thing: to sit with him, to get in front of him. And again, she gets so much praise from Jesus. And what does she do right? What does she get right? She doesn't say Jesus changes everything. She lives it out. It's so clearly her priority. This is the thing that she gets right. And so to you today, what are you holding back? You know, for me, I'll be honest with you, my biggest holdup on this whole thing is like the way that I like to plan. I plan my life out like chess. You know, I'm like, okay, if I do this, and then I do this, then that benefits that thing. And then I'll stack it all up, and then I'll be so valuable to so many people for so many reasons. And if one of those things gets removed, I can't handle it. Or I don't see how God could interact with that. And it honestly bothers me the way I think about my future, because I don't plan for him interrupting it. So what are you holding back? How do you follow Jesus in letting go? And are you ever going to get to it? Does following Jesus ever cost you? Does it ever hurt your reputation? Have you ever felt foolish or silly lately? And then here in this moment, I mean, we're going to take it some time to reflect during the song. But when you go home, you know, like, are you ever going to make time to address this? Where in your life do you actually need to loosen your grip? Because Jesus is asking for a loose grip on your life. And just know that you can trust him. He knows what you need. But he invites us to surrender and to trust him with our life. Are you going to loosen your grip on the things that hold your heart? We're going to spend some time right now just reflecting as Tim plays, and look at your life. Maybe confess. I don't know what you need to do, really. I don't know what it is for you. Take a moment. Let's be reflective. Let's sit at his feet. My dad, on that road after church, I think he saw something in Jesus. It cost him a car and a gun, a little bit of his dignity. But I think he saw something real enough that his grip loosened on something that valuable to him. And I want to say to you guys, I think you're going to leave this room and the voice will come and say it's too much. You should think this through more. Is that really God? And there's a difference between wisdom and keeping the flask sealed because you're afraid of what pouring it out might cost you. And the question I'd rather leave you with isn't how much should you give? And the church, just to be clear, we're not asking for anything. This is about you and how you value Jesus. It's not how much you give, and it's not, are you more like Mary or are you more like Judas? It's simply this: what do you actually see when you look at Jesus? How valuable is he to you? Because if you see him and you really see him, the rest, I find, tends to take care of itself. How you see Jesus determines whether you pour out or you cash out. And one final little detail that I actually think is really important in talks like this is it might feel like I'm saying work harder, give more, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. This is not a faith of works. This is a faith of Jesus's works, where he has done all that you could never do. And if you place your trust and your belief in him, you're in. He couldn't love you any more, any less. You're set. But a thing that I think is important is that how you see Jesus determines the quality of your obedience. And it's your obedience to God that sets you apart as sons and daughters of him. So don't leave here thinking that you need to effort more, that you need to give more. I want you to leave asking, do I really value him like I think I value him? What do I actually see when I look at Jesus? Let me pray for you guys. Jesus, I ask that you would give us eyes like Mary to see you as more valuable than anything else in our life. God, while I loved that moment of singing the song and it felt real to me in that moment, the clash is going to happen on Tuesday and on Wednesday when it doesn't feel, when I don't feel like valuing you like I should. Holy Spirit, we need your help to be a people that value you. And it's not a question to anyone where our value truly lies. God, would you help us? Would you grow us up in you to be people who are unafraid and unashamed to put you before anything and everything else, God? Would you help us? In your holy name we pray. Amen.